So what you're about to see will be a typical Karl Popper debate. There are two teams in this debate. Both teams have 3 members. The team to your left and my right will be the affirmative team, which means that they will agree with the topic. They like to call themselves the winning team. The other team, which is to your right and to my left, will be the negative team, which means that they will disagree with the affirmative team, and ideally that will mean that they will disagree with the topic as well. They will also like to think of themselves as the winning team, so we'll see who gets that honor. As in any other Karl Popper debate, there will be 10 parts in this. There will be 6 speeches. Each member of each team will deliver a speech of their own. The first speakers of both teams will speak for 6 minutes, and the second and third speakers will speak for 5 minutes. After the first and second speeches, there will be cross-examinations. The first speakers will be cross-examined by the third speakers of the opposing teams, and the second speakers will be cross-examined by the first speakers of the opposing teams. In addition to this, in the Karl Popper debate, there also is 8 minutes preparation time for both teams, but I don't suspect the 2 teams will be needing too much of that. As any proper debate, this debate will also have a topic, or a resolution or a motion, call it whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. And the topic for this debate is relevant to the Karl Popper Debate Championships, and it reads as follows: that the United States of America was right in rejecting the Kyoto Protocol. That the United States of America was right in rejecting the Kyoto Protocol. I would like to ask Bella Kunay to open this debate for us.
Yes, Bella!
Anyone hear me? The motion before the House today is that the U.S. is right in rejecting the Kyoto Protocol. Now, in 1992, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change for the first time called for voluntary cuts in greenhouse emissions. Only 5 years later, and not with so much additional research, the Kyoto Protocol is signed, asking for the first time for legally binding rules. Then in March 2001, just 7 months before these rules actually became legally binding, the US abandoned the Kyoto. Now what we believe we first have to do is to analyze this critical moment at which the US decided to withdraw from the Kyoto Protocol. Now, until it was not legally binding, the US showed willingness to reduce its greenhouse emissions. It also accepted this idea that we have to generally commit to be nicer to the environment. When it became legally binding, the US pulled out. Now, we believe it was right in doing so, and this is for 2 reasons. First of all, the Kyoto Protocol of 1997 was a really poor protocol in more than one way. And when the US pulled out and questioned the effectiveness and the scientific basis of it, it actually opened the way for reforming. Now, the second reason is it was unfair to the United States. Now, let's go to point number 1. Why was it actually good for Kyoto that the US withdrew? The first reason is that the scientific evidence for global warming being linked actually to human conduct was lacking and questionable. And although there was a lot of media coverage and politicians announcing doomsday, there wasn't really a lot of scientific evidence to support that. For example, in 1995, there was a UN-appointed commission, and it produced an initial draft on whether greenhouse emissions and global warming can be linked back to human behavior. And they actually said that no solid conclusions could actually be found. Once the report was given out, all the sentences which questioned the human effect of global warming have been deleted. And what this shows us is that basically the debate around global warming became a really politicized one and wasn't focusing anymore on scientific basis, and it was basically just an overreaction by a politician announcing doomsday. Also in the past, for example, 1995, 1997, the scientific community was saying, oh, we have global warming. 2 years later, we had an announcement of the next ice age coming. And 3 years later, it was again global warming. So what we're saying is that when the US withdrew, it actually told the scientists, be more cautious when you're trying to identify global problems so we can actually adapt to what you're saying in the long term. Now, the bottom line of this is that the U.S., by its withdrawal, has stopped the senseless political debate and the overreaction about global warming and greenhouse gases, and demanded scientists to actually present the threat, and not only politicians. Now, the second reason why we believe that it improved the way for improvement opened the way for improvement, was that the Kyoto set up quite arbitrary standards, which led to arbitrary solutions and unfair solutions. Now, for example, developing countries had no responsibility in cutting their greenhouse emissions at all. For example, China, who will in 2015 be the largest producers of greenhouse emissions, doesn't have to abide by the norms at all. India as well. But it's not only these countries which we label as developing. In this Annex 2 group, we also have countries as, for example, Israel, Singapore, and South Korea, all be doomed as actually industrialized developed countries. They do not have to abide by any norms. As well, for example, Slovenia and Malta, both members of the EU and the European Monetary Union. As well, Monaco, Monaco, a wonderful place, a lot of casinos, doesn't have to abide by any rules at all. We say that these standards are arbitrarily and unfair, and we believe the US was right to reject it. The thing is that also because these countries do not have to abide by the norms, there is no evidence that if the US stops polluting and China and South Africa and India, Egypt, Brazil keep polluting, that there will actually be any improvement in the global sense. So we're saying the US is right rejecting the protocol that could harm its interests without any tangible benefit. Now, the first reasons for this is that the Kyoto failed to do one basic thing, and this is to take regional differences into account. Now, Australia and Norway have been putting forward proposals that ask, for example, to take into account that US's industry right now is in a really poor state, kind of behind time, really technologically inefficient, while, for example, Germany's industry and Austria's industry, where the EU and the governments have been pumping in money, is way more developed. And so, for example, for Germany to adapt the Kyoto Protocol means a lot less adaptation, no hurting of the economy, while for the US it meant quite a lot of bad things, and we believe that this should be taken into account, and the Kyoto didn't. So we believe that also the Kyoto served as a wonderful motivation for actually people to take care about this environment. For example, the US, we have grassroots organizations helping people to reduce their greenhouse gases. We have 400 US cities who are trying with financial benefits to help their citizens produce less greenhouse emissions. So we're saying there's nothing bad with trying to be nice to the environment, but we say when it's legally binding, the US is right to withdraw. Now, the second basic big reason is that it has been long stressed and ignored that it would have had detrimental consequences for the U.S. economy if the U.S. actually ratified or didn't withdraw from the Kyoto. As for example, electricity costs in the U.S. would have gone up by up to 50%. Gasoline prices would have gone up. There would be a lot of investment needed also from private people, from people like us, to basically bring the U.S. to the standards that were needed by the Kyoto Protocol. Now, what we say is that this, not what we say, but also evidence says, we would have a loss from 2001 to 2002 of $3.3 billion. It would probably slow the already slow annual growth rate in the United States of 2%. Also, people who, people who are really poor, well, energy and gasoline presents a higher percentage of their monthly cost, which means that it would harm poor families the most if Kyoto was actually put into place. And because for all these reasons, we believe that in 2001, if you would have the same evidence, you would have also withdrawn. Ready?
Okay, so today, the affirmative is basically agreeing with George Bush's policies on climate change.
No, what we're saying today is that U.S. had reasons to reject the Kyoto Protocol, and that also any administration that is in place in the White House should take into account scientific research, the needs